Rachel Morgan, 38 years old. My life looks neat on paper, you could say. Stable job, a cozy house, a healthy bank balance. People look at me and think, she's got it all together. They don't see the cracks in the walls, the weight of keeping everything in perfect order. I have a boyfriend, Matthew, who's 36. He's a dental hygienist, always charming, always easy to talk to. He's the kind of man who remembers birthdays, sends flowers for no reason, and can talk a couple into buying a house they can't afford with a smile. People love him. They think I'm lucky. They think he's lucky too. But lately, I've been wondering who's really lucky. The evening was supposed to be perfect. I'd made his favorite pasta, opened a bottle of wine, but as we sat down to eat, something felt off. Matthew was staring at his phone, scrolling, not even looking at me. I waited for him to notice. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Yeah," he mumbled. "Just looking at Devin's stories. He's in Bali again." I felt my stomach twist at the mention of Devin, his ex. Devin was everything I wasn't. Rich, spontaneous, carefree. He used to whisk Matthew away on trips around the world, all paid for by his trust fund. He was exciting. I was predictable. I tried to hide it, but I couldn't help myself. "That's nice for him," I said, trying to sound indifferent. Matthew put his phone down. "You know, Devin was always more fun. He'd take me on spontaneous adventures, wake me up at 3 a.m. to go to the beach. You're just so boring. Everything with you is planned." It stung, harder than I wanted to admit. "Me? I thought stability was what you wanted," I said, setting my fork down, my throat tightening. "You used to complain about how unreliable Devin was." "Yeah, but at least he wasn't boring," Matthew said, a slight edge in his voice. "He knew how to surprise me." I couldn't stop myself. "Maybe you should go back to him then." His eyes flashed, a mix of surprise and confusion. I knew he thought I was joking, but I wasn't. I was tired of always being the one who played it safe. He laughed nervously, but I saw the hurt in his eyes. "No, don't say that. You know I didn't mean it like that. It's just, I need more excitement." I had heard enough. The whole dinner felt like a performance. His ex was always in the picture, and tonight it felt like I had lost. I decided right then, I'd show him what spontaneous really looked like. The next morning, I woke up with a plan, a big one. Something so spontaneous that Matthew would never see it coming. I couldn't sit around any longer, pretending that the life we were building together was enough. It wasn't just that Matthew needed excitement. I needed freedom. I needed to prove that I wasn't just the boring girlfriend who cooked dinner and managed the budget. I needed to show him that I could be spontaneous too, in a way that would change everything. Before he left for work, I started making calls. The first one was to Jake, a college friend who had transitioned into commercial real estate. I needed information, something big. "Jake, remember that senior consultant position your company offered me 6 months ago?" I asked. "Is it still available?" He hesitated. "Yeah, but Rachel, it's in Austin. That's a big move." "Yeah, I know," I said, feeling the excitement bubbling inside me. But I need a change, a big one. The decision wasn't hard to make. I was tired of feeling stuck in this life, constantly catering to Matthew's expectations. The idea of moving to Austin, starting fresh, was exhilarating. But I couldn't do it alone. Not yet. "Okay, I'll reach out to them today," Jake said, clearly unsure of my sudden enthusiasm. "But you're serious about this, right?" "Absolutely," I replied, a smile tugging at my lips. "I'm serious." Next, I called the property management company that had been handling my condo rental. "I need to rent out my place furnished," I said, my voice steady. "How soon can we make this happen?" "Furnished units rent fast," the manager replied. "We can list it immediately. When are you planning to move out?" "Next Friday," I answered without hesitation. The word sounded surreal even to me, but there was no turning back now. Finally, I dialed the moving company. "I need a full-service move. Pack, load, drive, unload. Next Friday," I said, not even giving them a chance to object. The excitement of it all took over. "You sure about this?" the mover asked. "Yeah, I'm being spontaneous," I said, hearing my own words with a sense of finality. By noon, I had accepted the job offer in Austin, a 60% pay raise, and signed a lease on a stunning loft in downtown Austin. I didn't even see it in person. I did a virtual tour and signed the paperwork over video chat. I felt like I was floating on air. Matthew still didn't know anything about my plan. He was in his usual routine, heading to work as I made final preparations. I could barely sit still, knowing that in a few short days, everything would change. When Matthew got home that evening, he had no idea what I had done. He complained about his day at work, as usual, while I pretended everything was normal. I was waiting for the right moment. "Hey, I thought we could order takeout tonight," I said casually. "I'll let you pick. I'm being spontaneous." Matthew looked up, surprised. "Spontaneous? You?" I shrugged. "Yeah, why not? You've always wanted me to be more fun. Well, here I am." He smirked, amused. "I thought you were the boring one, but I'll give you this. At least you're trying." He didn't know how hard I was trying, or how far I'd already gone. I let him choose the dinner, and while he scrolled through his phone, I caught a glimpse of the latest update from Devin, the guy who could do no wrong. Devin's Instagram story showed a picture of a beach in Bali, the golden sunset in the background. I could almost hear Matthew's longing. "Is everything okay?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral, though I felt a pang of jealousy rise in my chest. Matthew didn't answer right away, his eyes glued to the screen. "Yeah, just thinking about how exciting Devin's life is. Bali again. He's living the dream, you know?" I didn't want to hear it anymore. "Maybe you should hit him up then," I said, my voice casual. "Go live the dream with him. Maybe he's got room for you." Matthew looked at me, his face full of confusion and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" I smiled, feeling something inside me break free. "Well, you keep comparing me to him. Maybe it's time for you to see what it's really like." He scoffed. "You can't be serious." "Oh, but I am," I stood up, pushing my chair back with more force than necessary. "Maybe you should reach out to him. He sounds fun, right? He'd probably take you to Bali." I watched as the expression on Matthew's face shifted from confusion to something I couldn't quite read, but I wasn't about to explain myself, not anymore. I didn't wait for his response. I had made my decision. When the movers arrived the following Friday, Matthew was still in bed. He didn't even hear the doorbell ring. By the time he did, it was too late. The living room was already packed up. "Who are these people?" he asked, stumbling out of the bedroom in his pajamas, his hair a mess. "They're the movers," I said, walking past him as if everything was perfectly normal. "I'm moving to Austin today." He froze, blinking at me like he couldn't believe what I was saying. "Wait, what? You're what?" I turned to him, keeping my voice steady. "Yeah, I'm moving. I thought it'd be spontaneous, just like you wanted." His face turned pale. "You can't be serious. This is insane. You can't just leave. We had a life here." I smirked. "Not anymore. I've got a better job, a loft in Austin, a fresh start." I said it like it was the easiest thing in the world. "But what about the condo? Where am I supposed to live?" Matthew's voice cracked, the panic evident. "Didn't you say you didn't want to be tied down? You're not on the lease, remember?" I felt a rush of satisfaction as the words left my mouth. It was the most spontaneous thing I'd ever done. Matthew's face twisted in anger and confusion. "You're just going to leave? After everything?" "After everything," I repeated, my heart pounding. "You wanted spontaneous, right? This is what it looks like." I didn't give him a chance to argue further. The movers kept working, and Matthew stood frozen in place, his emotions all over the place. I couldn't let myself feel guilty. Not this time. When I walked out the door, the only thing I felt was freedom. And for the first time in a long time, it felt exhilarating. The following days felt surreal. I was in Austin now, my new life unfolding before me in a way I hadn't imagined just a week ago. My new apartment was everything I could have hoped for. Open spaces, high ceilings, a loft that felt like it belonged to someone who had truly started over. I was no longer confined by the expectations of my past, and I could breathe again. But then came the calls. The first one came that night, just after I'd settled in. "Matthew." "Rachel, this is crazy," he said, his voice laced with desperation. "You can't just leave. We can work this out." I leaned back against the couch, staring out the window at the skyline. I could hear the faint noise of the city below, a stark contrast to the silence in my previous life. "I didn't leave, Matthew. I moved on. I thought you'd like that," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "You said I needed excitement. Well, here I am." "Don't do this. You can't just leave like that. You're being impulsive," he snapped. "What about us? What about everything we built?" I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. But it didn't change my decision. Not anymore. "We didn't build anything, Matthew. You built a comparison to your ex, and I was just living in it," I said quietly. "You said you wanted someone spontaneous. Well, here it is." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost feel his confusion through the phone. "You really mean this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're really done?" I took a deep breath. "I'm done." I hung up before he could say another word. The next morning, the texts started rolling in. Matthew was relentless. At first, they were just apologies, begging for a second chance. But as the day wore on, they became more frantic, more pleading. "I'm sorry, I love you, please come back." I didn't mean it, I was just frustrated. "You're making a mistake." The messages piled up in my inbox, but I didn't open them, not once. And then came the social media posts. It didn't take long for Matthew to try and manipulate the situation online, painting himself as the heartbroken victim. His posts were filled with dramatic captions about how his girlfriend had just left without warning. He posted about how he was feeling lost without her and how he had no idea what went wrong. It was infuriating, and it was exactly what I expected. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw his latest story where he said, "I never knew what I had until it was gone." It wasn't just about the posts, though. It was the lies, the half-truths. He had tried to rewrite our history, painting himself as the wounded soul, the man who was too stable for me. But I wasn't going to let him control this narrative. Not anymore. That afternoon, as I sat at my new desk, settling into my first day of work, I received a message from my friend Claire back home. "Hey, I just saw Matthew's Instagram," she wrote. "Is he serious? He's telling everyone you abandoned him, that you left him for no reason." I stared at the message for a long time. The anger that had been simmering under the surface suddenly surged to the forefront. I couldn't let him get away with it. Not when I had been the one to sacrifice everything, not when I had built my entire life around his needs, his criticisms, his comparisons. I opened Instagram and began to type. I didn't abandon anyone. I just stopped living for someone else's validation. I'm tired of being compared to an ex who was never part of my life, and I'm tired of trying to be someone I'm not, just to make someone else happy, I wrote, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed. "If you want spontaneity, Matthew, here it is. I'm not your boring, predictable girlfriend anymore. I'm me, and that's the only person I'm ever going to be." I hit post before I could second-guess myself. Matthew's reaction wasn't immediate, but by the time I checked my phone the next morning, the backlash had started. His followers, the same ones who had sent supportive messages when he posted about how heartbroken he was, began to turn on him. One comment stood out. "Didn't you just post last week about how boring she was, play stupid games, win stupid prizes?" Matthew didn't like that. His posts became more defensive, more accusatory. But it didn't help. People started to piece together the truth, sharing screenshots of his stories, the ones where he compared me to his ex, mocking me for being boring. They started to realize that his online persona didn't match the reality. It was only a matter of time before people started posting receipts. Then Devin showed up. I couldn't believe it when I saw his name in my DMs. "Hey, Rachel," he wrote. "I know we didn't always see eye to eye, but I just wanted to check in. I saw what Matthew posted, and I wanted to let you know I've got your back. If you ever need someone to talk to, you know where to find me." I was stunned. The guy who had once been Matthew's perfect ex had now turned into an ally. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of relief. At least there were people out there who saw through Matthew's facade. By the end of the week, Matthew's online image was crumbling. People were calling out his hypocrisy, his emotional manipulation. His followers were split, with half of them calling him out for treating me like a backup, and the other half still trying to defend him, claiming he just needed time to heal. I didn't care about the drama anymore. I was building my own life, and it felt amazing. When I checked in with Claire again, she shared an update. "I just saw your post. Proud of you, girl. Honestly, you deserve better than someone who keeps comparing you to his ex. You've got a fresh start now. Just keep moving forward." And that's exactly what I plan to do. It didn't take long for the fallout to reach new heights. Matthew's social media posts became increasingly erratic. He would post one thing about how heartbroken he was, then another about how people just didn't understand him. But his act was wearing thin, and it wasn't just his followers who were noticing. It was his family too. The first message came from his mom. "Matthew, I don't know what's going on with you and Rachel, but this isn't how we raised you. You need to apologize to her, especially after all the love she gave you," she texted me. I read it with a sense of irony. Here was his mother, telling me to apologize to him when I had been the one left feeling invisible for so long. I didn't respond. Instead, I let the silence speak for itself. I was done engaging in the drama. Matthew's manipulation, his desperate attempts to control the narrative, were all falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. But then came the twist I wasn't expecting. Devin, the very ex-Matthew had always compared me to, started publicly calling him out. "Matthew, you want to talk about stability? Let's talk about how much you used to talk down to Rachel for being too boring, Devin posted, tagging Matthew. Just saying, maybe it's time to stop blaming her for everything and start looking at your own issues. Devin's message gained traction fast. People who had followed Matthew's lead, those who saw him as the perfect ex, began to question everything. Later that night, I saw a post from one of Matthew's old friends. Man, how many times do we have to hear about Rachel being predictable? If that's how you really felt, why'd you stay with her for so long? That comment was the final blow. It felt like the whole world had finally woken up to the reality of Matthew's behavior. It was no longer just my word against his. It was the truth, exposed for all to see. But the real moment of reckoning came when Matthew posted an apology video, the kind that people usually record when they realize they've messed up too badly to pretend anymore. Hey everyone, he said, his eyes looking tired and red. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm owning up to them now. I treated Rachel poorly. I compared her to my ex, and I didn't appreciate the stability she gave me. I thought I needed excitement, but what I really needed was to grow up. It was the most sincere thing I'd heard from him in weeks, but it wasn't enough, not after everything. The post didn't get the reaction he was hoping for. Sure, some people were sympathetic. They called him brave for admitting his mistakes, but the majority saw it for what it was, a desperate attempt to salvage his reputation. A reputation that had been built on deceit and self-centeredness. I wasn't about to fall for it. I decided it was time to close the door on the past completely. I made my own post. I don't need anyone's approval to be who I am, I wrote. I'm not going back to what I was. The past is done. Matthew may have thought he could compare me to someone who never truly respected him, but I've learned the hard way that when someone constantly needs to drag you down to feel better about themselves, they're not worth fighting for. I'm not going back to that. The fallout from that post was immediate. People started pointing out Matthew's hypocrisy even more, citing old stories where he had mocked me behind my back or acted as though my commitment was somehow boring. One post, in particular, caught my eye. Isn't this the same guy who said Rachel was a boring adult while he was living off his ex money? Funny how things change when the tables turn. It was a gut punch, but the truth hurt. I couldn't deny it anymore. The world had started to see Matthew for what he really was. Just a man who couldn't handle responsibility and wanted to blame everyone else for his own dissatisfaction. I went to bed that night feeling strangely calm. I had done what I needed to do. I had closed the chapter on Matthew. I had moved on. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. The next day, I started getting calls from friends I hadn't spoken to in a while. They were congratulating me, not just for moving on from Matthew, but for standing up for myself. It felt good. Better than I expected. But the best call came from Claire. Rachel, she said, her voice filled with warmth. I just wanted to tell you, I've never been prouder of you. You made the right decision. Not just for you, but for everyone who's been stuck in toxic relationships. You're showing them it's okay to walk away. I smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over me. Claire had always been there for me, but this call, this support, felt like a reminder that I wasn't alone. I just want to be me now, I said, my voice steady. I want to keep growing, to keep moving forward. And that was the truth. For the first time, I was finally living life on my own terms. No comparisons, no expectations, just me. A week later, I got an unexpected message from Matthew. It was short. I hope you're doing well. I messed up. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time, unsure of how to respond. Finally, I deleted it. I had no more words for him. The apology came too late. I had already forgiven myself. As the days turned into weeks, I settled into my new life in Austin. The job was everything I hoped for. My coworkers were supportive and welcoming. I was learning, growing, and most importantly, I was starting to enjoy life again. And then, as if the universe was giving me a sign, I met someone. Her name was Sarah. She was an engineer, smart, funny, and unlike anyone I had ever met before. She didn't care about the past. She just wanted to know who I was now. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen, truly seen. Matthew's post became a distant memory, slowly fading away from my feed. People moved on. Life moved on. And I was moving forward, free from the person I had once thought I couldn't live without. I was no longer the boring girlfriend. I was Rachel, and that was enough.